Togashi keeps teasing us with Nobunaga's ability. Hope he shows it in these next 2 chapters. Right now, this is the sole thing giving me hope that Nobunaga won't just die immediately. Because I don't know if Togashi would kill him without giving us something, just something. And contrary to popular belief, we actually do know a bit about Nobunaga's ability. First off, he definitely has one because Shalnak referenced it in chapter 104. Specifically, he said that he and Nobunaga's abilities can be easily replaced, as opposed to Shizuku and Pakunoda's. So if anyone was expecting anything complicated, intricate, or just particularly special about Nobunaga's abilities, look, you might be disappointed. Because chances are he just has a very basic Enhancer Hatsu taken to a very high level. Very much like what Gon did with his abilities, which I would describe as heightened basic. And also Uvogin, actually Uvogin's probably a much better example, because he was a troop member who didn't have what we would typically classify as a Hatsu these days. Just lots and lots of punching and big bangs. So I would imagine that Nobunaga is just a more precise version of Uvogin, which I think makes sense because both of them were part of the Phantom Troop attack squad before Uvogin was killed. Now Nobunaga is still part of the squad and Uvogin isn't, because he's dead. For anyone who's forgotten, right now the most we know about Nobunaga is that he has a 4-meter end range, which is directly correlated to the reach of his blade. And for any Jujutsu Kaisen fans out there, you can kind of equate it to a simple domain, where if anyone enters the radius of Nobunaga's end, then they get instantly cut up, which is why having him stuck in a close quarters room is still pretty decent, because I would imagine that the proper counter to Nobunaga is a ranged ability. But this is still problematic, because let's say, sure, he gets attacked, he uses whatever funky sword Hatsu he has. Maybe he even kills a handful of Haley dude bros. Great. But what next? Now they know exactly what Nobunaga's ability is, and he's lost his last advantage in this conflict. The Haley family then just send in one of the 20 other someones with a counter ability, and things get real bad real quick. Nobunaga attacking the wall is definitely a nod to his encounter with Gon and Killua in the York New City arc. So this is something I didn't notice at first. But this whole situation is very much like a reverse York New City. When Nobunaga had captured Gon and Killua, he trapped them in a room with himself guarding the doorway. So in that case, Nobunaga was acting as the landmine doorway Nen ability. So what did Gon and Killua do? Well, they exited through the walls instead, which is the exact opposite of what's happening here. Here, Nobunaga was forbidden from entering the room due to the landmine ability. So he used what I'm now going to refer to as the Gon stratagem, and entered the room through the walls instead. And this is why I really want to go back to York New City in detail once the inevitable hiatus kicks in once more. Because when it comes to the troop, Togashi has a very clear idea of what he wants. Oh, and another thing I didn't pick up on immediately was Nobunaga talking about teleportation, as if he's experienced a similar power before, and he absolutely has. It's the most forgotten about Chrollo ability, but he does have, or at least he did have, a teleportation Hatsu stolen by Skill Hunter. It was used in chapter 106 to teleport Nobunaga away from Hisoka and defuse the incoming battle that Nobunaga wanted to start. And when you put all of this stuff together, you can see how Nobunaga landed on the right answer here. It's because of sheer experience. Nobunaga has experienced similar powers and similar situations before, and then he just went wham, that's the answer. So his hypothesis was much more on the mark than what Finks' experiences taught him. I've never had a character grow on me as fast as Henry. Dude's a boss. Completely agreed, and it's very interesting to see how times change, isn't it? Henry was introduced towards the end of the Before times, and in fact he was the very last face we saw before Hunter x Hunter went on its longest hiatus to date. So we were left lingering on this man for 3 years. He talked a pretty big game, and I'm happy to report that he definitely lived up to that 3-year cliffhanger that he left us on. And I think the community is in pretty shared agreement about this. For example, some of the comments I read were, let me find these. Instead of Hunter x Hunter, the series is now Henry. Oh, and also, if Henry's balls get any more massive, they might sink the entire ship. Which is why if this guy dies now, I am going to be gutted. Even with the Phantom Troop flashback, Henry has been the narrative hero of this batch of chapters, taking command and making stuff happen, finding Hisoka, hunting the Haoli, and gaining himself a brand new troop best friend. It really does feel like Henry is the protagonist of this batch, so please don't die. Although, speaking of, I think Nobunaga will be the first member of the troop to die on the Black Whale. Togashi has given him so many highlights and singled out moments that I think it's a telltale sign that he's going out first. This is perhaps correct. If this was any other story, yes, I would be close to 100% sure that Nobunaga is going to die imminently. because he's just become too damn likable. And in my opinion, right now, he would be by far the most hard-hitting troop death. The reason why I can't 100% buy into that though, is because Togashi often ignores or even deliberately subverts narrative tropes so that you can almost never predict what's going to happen. With that said, right now his situation is kind of like what happened when Hisoka walked into Heaven's Arena to fight Chrollo. Nobunaga has willingly stumbled into a battlefield chosen by his enemy. His enemy has access to an entire suite of Nen abilities, and Nobunaga himself, as far as we know, relies mostly on a single type of power, the slicey slice. And look, we saw how well that situation turned out for Hisoka. Pretty well, actually. He revived himself from death and became a god. But I don't think the same thing is going to happen with Nobunaga. I've got this very, very real fear. But I did make a Nobunaga death toll to see how all of you were feeling about this, with a whopping over 50% saying yes, he is going to die. Now, to be fair, I didn't ask if Nobunaga will die right here and now, so a lot of that could be a more future-focused yes. But just under 20% said no, and a quarter of you were simply confused by your own existence, thus selecting the cross-eyed Nobunaga option. When do you think we'll get more information on Sheila? Alright, this is what got me most about not continuing the troop flashback, because including Sheila in that story was a stroke of genius. It threw everything I thought I knew about the troop and Kurapika's past just completely out of whack. And in the end, we were left on this precious seesaw of non-answers. Because Sheila very well could have committed a big old betrayal and essentially be responsible for the formation of the Phantom Troop. But at the same time, she could also be a completely innocent party who got caught up in this exceptionally bloodthirsty web of revenge. But I really want to know what happened to her. Because Sheila, as far as we know, found the Kurta remains and then continued on to achieve her dream of becoming a hunter. But we've met a lot of hunters by now, and Sheila is not one of them. With the exception of the very fringe theory that Sheila is Pariston, which is something that I've never really seen fit to cover on the channel. And remember, I am the guy who really thought that Illumi as Hisoka was plausible. So that should tell you a bit about the Sheila Pariston idea. I don't know though, maybe I should just do it for fun, because stupid theories, they're so good. They're my favorite theories. I mean, it's not the worst idea I've ever heard. It's far from the best though. The spiders are toast. Warm, buttery toast. I'll have you know that spiders on warm buttery toast is an Australian delicacy, and you've got me feeling quite hungry right now. No, seriously, where did the other two guys they sent go? Did they even go to the same room as before? Is the user able to switch the destination of the teleportation on the fly, or is this some other ability? Alright, so this commenter is asking about the two Mafia guys that Feitan basically pushed through the door at sword point, and I don't blame people for not getting this whole segment. Togashi is sometimes a bit weird with paneling and portraying the passage of time, but these two guys did end up in the same room as Henry and Nobunaga did. They were likely killed, as Henry notes, with very fresh bloods all over the floor, but Henry also suspects that they were interrogated. Whether that's true or not, I don't really know. I personally think they probably weren't interrogated because there wasn't a lot of time. Plus, the Haley family already knew that the troop were coming after them, so they took away the bodies and set a new trap. In regards to time though, I think some people were also confused by how quickly Nobunaga appeared behind Henry, and here I solely blame Togashi's paneling, because I can see how it gives the impression that the Phantom Troop started following the transmitter signal and then having this whole conversation before Nobunaga chose to go as well. Because we cut to the radar, then show a wide shot of the general public area of Tier 3 and then back to the troop, which gives the illusion of movement that the troop have covered that distance and are now in the public area, but in reality they're still right in front of the doorway. I personally think this could have been made much clearer because evidently it did confuse a whole ton of people. But essentially, Henry vanished, like so. And then the troop spoke for less than a minute before Nobunaga went, "Nah, I'm gonna make a friend," and then went in. Will you cover every chapter that gets released from this point on? That's the idea. In fact, that was always the idea. However, a slight problem did occur with chapter 396, and I'm still getting questions about that right now. But I got sick the week that chapter came out, real sick. And by the time I was well enough to record again, well, look, it was time to talk about 397. So I just had to skip one, hoping not to do that again. But due to my unhealthy fascination with fictional hunters, I will absolutely be talking about every new chapter, because these reviews really help my understanding of the series as well. Sometimes Hunter x Hunter, look, we all know it can be a bit dense, so it's always helpful to sit down and just take some time to work things out. I don't really understand what the goal of Hunter x Hunter is. Just to explore the unknown and get sidetracked 50 times? It's actually a really good question. What is the point of Hunter x Hunter? Because there's no real discernible end goal anymore. anymore. No father to find, no pirate king, no sister to cure. And at this stage, I think the point of Hunter x Hunter is just to follow the living, breathing world that Togashi has created, and bringing these characters that we've already met to satisfying conclusions. At this stage, Hunter x Hunter doesn't really need a point though. Not like a typical shonen point anyway. Because we lost track of that point literally decades ago when the Chimera Ant arc began. The point of this series now is an exploration of just whatever the hell Togashi wants to bring into existence. Because he's built up enough trust as a storyteller that his fans are pretty much willing to follow him wherever he so desires to go. And there are very few authors who can pull something like that off. I wish we knew if Togashi is continuing or not. Like, I love Hunter x Hunter, best anime manga ever, but I kinda get disappointed if we get into a hiatus again. Well, wish no longer, because we do know. As mentioned in the chapter review, Togashi's assistant has confirmed that at least 30 more chapters have been written. In fact, they were written 4 years ago. To clarify, that does not mean storyboarded or even fully scripted, but there is a broad outline and an intent to make them happen. With that said, I would expect a short hiatus to be occurring quite soon, because when chapter 400 comes out, that will mark 10 new chapters, which is the traditional batch release number. We do know for a fact that we're continuing beyond 400 though, because work has already begun on chapters 401 through 404. In fact, we know that Togashi finished the storyboarding for chapter 400 in late July, because that's when he posted the image of Kurapika. And maybe that actually gives us a really good timeline expectation. That chapter was drafted about 5 months before it's actually going to be published, and to be fair, that's because they were waiting for at least 10 chapters to be close to complete before commencing publishing. But we could find ourselves in a situation where we do have big multi-month breaks between batches, maybe even up to 5 or 6 months, which I'm pretty fine with, because just about anything beats waiting another 3 years.